Hey there guys, we're going to take a look at the second version of Red Deck Wins, and this is the first look at kind of working in some draw spells, and we are taking this time to the extreme. We are bringing in as much draw as we can possibly get, and there's been a lot of really cool things printed in recent sets that have given us some new draw spells with red, and some things we can really work off of. So let's get right down to it. Once again, I am kind of just going to give you an introduction to the deck, and then we'll take a look at 5 games with it and kind of see if going to the extreme is definitely way too much, which I will assume it is, but we're going to still do this anyways because I think it's a great way to take a look at the impact that certain cards can make. Real quick, I want to apologize for, I guess, different mic at this point in time. I do travel for a living, so I am on the road as I record this. But we're going to make the best of it, and I keep switching up programs here as well, so don't mind those watermarks. We're going to get this all sorted out eventually. So this deck right here, it's still going to have that same core of 1 mana cost, 3 damage spells with Chain Lightning, Lava Spike, and Lightning Bolt. We're also going to have, in a similar manner, a full set of creatures, but we are actually, I did reduce the Color Marauders down from a full set to a set of 3. This is something that I think worked out just because I wanted to fit in certain other cards. First and foremost, I want to talk about the draw spells. Now, in Innistrad block, we got these two right here. The first one is Faithless Looting, and this has seen some play in the Storm deck so far. It is a great spell. It has that flashback ability. It works in the same way as some of the previous cards that we've had, and the fact that it allows you to draw 2 cards if you discard 2. So it's something, if you have 2 cards in hand or less, it's not going to work out in your favor because you will be discarding away everything. It still can have a lot of great impact on the game, mostly because of the fact that it has this flashback. It gives you a lot of opportunities. It does, however, mean that you may have to hold on to some lands or whatnot in order to give it something to draw for. Now, Dangerous Wager is another interesting one. You discard your hand and then draw 2 cards. Now, in this spell, as opposed to Faithless Looting, the drawback on it is the fact that you're discarding 2 cards after you draw. With Dangerous Wager, the discard is before you draw. It is your entire hand, so it can be seen as a much more substantial drawback. But what you can do is, if you have a hand that is 1 card, say that 1 card is Dangerous Wager, you cast Dangerous Wager, and then you'll discard your hand, but because you already have no cards in your hand, you're not losing anything, you're just going to draw 2 cards off it. The next thing that we got was Wild Guess, and this is the one that I'm going to favor a little bit more heavily. You see I brought in a full set of 4. This is a spell that allows you to discard a card and then draw 2. So you're basically trading 2 for 1 if you count in the cost of playing the Wild Guess. Now, what this is going to do is going to give us some opportunities to draw additional cards, mostly between that and Dangerous Wager. Dangerous Wager is something I don't want to run more than 2 of because of the fact that I found in some experimental games running Dangerous Wager in other decks that what can end up happening is if you end up with a hand that is 2 or 3 Dangerous Wagers, all of a sudden it's not going to work out in your favor. So what happens here is these are going to provide kind of the bulk of our card draw. Now they do have that drawback that is very common with red draw spells, in that you have to discard cards. So what we did is we brought in a full set of Fiery Temper, and Fiery Temper is a spell that costs 3 to do 3 damage, but if you get a chance to discard this spell for whatever reason, you can play it for its madness cost, which is only a single red, and this is basically going to increase this list right here again by 1, mostly in the same way that Rift Bolt in the other version increased the number of 1 cost 3 damage spells. So we're basically going to count that in this this group here. It is something that you can easily play. 3 is not too far out of reach. We are mono red, so this double red mana cost is not going to cost us anything more. And we're going to have a lot of opportunities to actually discard it and play it for the madness thanks to Dangerous Wagers and Wild Guess. So we're definitely bringing a full set there. Again, taking this to the extreme, so I also brought in Flame Jet in place of something like Incinerate. It is the same thing that does 3 damage. This does specify that it has to be to target player and cannot be used on a creature. However, it does give you a cycling ability, and that's going to allow even more draw. And again, taking this to an extreme, it's going to be as much draw as possible. So we are bringing also in a full set of Needle Drops. Needle Drop is a 1 damage spell that is going to allow you to draw a card as well. And then we're going to bring in a full set of Forgotten Caves to draw on those. Now, these are spells that are going to allow for a lot of draw, like I said, it is going to, however, slow your deck down significantly because of the fact that we have all of these slower draw spells. We lose things like the Firebolt to do the, I'm sorry, Fire Blast to do the 4 damage off of the sacrifice of 2 mountains. But we are going to hopefully ramp things up a little bit more. I did drop land count to 19, which I feel is a much more appropriate level for this deck. And any red deck wins deck. And I brought in Brimstone Volley because it gives us a chance to, say, needle drop something, and then play that for the morbid cost. I like it a little bit better than, say, the Searing Blaze because of the fact that they both have drawbacks, but the Brimstone Volley is still going to allow you a chance to do 3 damage, whereas the Searing Blaze is going to either do nothing or it still has a chance to do 1. I think Brimstone Volley is another card that is a better substitute over Searing Blaze, but only in a situation where you're running, say, 2 to 3 copies. I don't think it is a necessary 4 of in any means. Searing Blaze, I do like Searing Blaze, but I think it is much better suited for a sideboard card over anything else. So once again, we're not going to focus on sideboards. We're just going to take a look at this deck. This is the extreme of drawing cards in mono red burn and see if this actually is going to work out or if it's going to be a terrible thing. And then we're going to do another look at maybe the impact of just a few draw spells in this format, in this deck. So we're going to cut this here and we're going to jump into 5 games. Okay guys, we're going to do some of the replays here. This will be the first game. Now I know in the first video I did say that we were going to do these live, but again, because I'm on the road, and if you've ever used hotel internet, you know how terrible it is. So it's been a little bit laggy, and I would like to make these as short as possible and not have you sit through my lag sessions. So what I'm going to do is just do replays of these. Opening hand was okay. We do have 2 lands available, which is nice. Our first drops are easily Lava Spike. Needle Drop we won't be able to play right away, but we do have a turn 2 Kiln Fiend, so we are going to keep it. Now my opponent is going to be running an affinity deck, obvious by the first play being an artifact land. So he's going to have a lot of options to go pretty fast on us, and we're going to have to try and hold down some of his creatures as soon as possible. It can actually be a pretty fast deck, which you may not be aware of. First draw is Flame Jet. This is a great card, a mediocre card, I guess, actually. But that's okay. We're going to start off with a Lava Spike to the head. Alright, my opponent first play is going to be in a Tog, and now we're in kind of a really bad spot. And this is kind of a good thing, a good reason I wanted to show you guys this deck here. And that was because you have these burn spells. Needle Drop can't target this because it needs to do damage to something first before you can play it. Flame Jet is all of a sudden incredibly mediocre in comparison to Incinerate, which would allow us to deal with this Atog. In this point in the game, having a burn spell that would do 3 to this Atog would be great because he would be less willing to sacrifice off all his creatures, all his land, to save it. So right now we also cannot play Fiery Temper because it is that 3 cost. So it's a little bit unfortunate. So puts down Chrome Sphere. We are going to start out here. Actually, I played Keldon Marauders. I'm not sure if this is a better play than the Kiln Fiend. I was hoping to have a little bit of a block, cause a little bit of an issue, maybe get him to block the Marauder and then be able to use a Needle Drop off the Atog that is pumped up. Kiln Fiend would have been okay here. He would have had options easily to block that as well. And we wouldn't be able to really play anything but the Flame Jet on the following turn. Wild Guest into Fiery Temper is great, but we need a 3rd land to make it worthwhile. So not a great situation, but we're going to see what we can do here. Down comes Mirror Enforcer. He's going to use the drum, play off the sphere, and puts down another star. Now you can see that Kiln Fiend would probably be a better option there. We would have been able to Lava Spike, pump it up, force the block. He would have been able to easily sacrifice some stuff. He's getting to that point in time where he can get rid of some lands and whatnot, especially when you have the Springleaf Drum into play. It's a little easier for him to sacrifice off lands, but we did decide to attack into him at this point in time. Again, trying to see what he was willing to do as far as blocking with the Atog. Because we did do damage to him, I decided it was best there, instead of casting a Flame Jet, which would be all my mana to do 3 damage, I would instead be able to use the Needle Drop while I actually had an opportunity. I could, draw the card off of that, and then I would still have mana available to Lava Spike. I could have also tried to Chain Lightning this Atog, but again, he would have had options. If I had something like an early play on that last turn where it would have been harder for him to make the choice between sacrificing lands to keep the Atog or not. It would have been a better play. At this point in time, if I throw out the Chain Lightning on the Atog, he can simply sacrifice the Chromatic Star, which is going to work out in his favor because he's simply going to draw a card and his Atog lives. So I was kind of hoping at this point in time that I could just race him out. And again, I think maybe Keldon Marauders would not have been the ideal play for racing him out there. He did actually have a Galvanic Blast, which is going to pretty much end things out. If you do the math here, it's going to be game over if he knows to do the math as well. That does put me down to 16. So he's going to be able to swing out here and sacrifice basically all of his lands, all of his artifacts minus the Enforcer, and do enough damage to finish me off. So there you go, a really fast game, but at the same time I wanted to definitely show this because I think it showed one of the weaknesses that this deck has. A lot of the spells are targeting player only and do not give you an opportunity to make that early play on the Atog. So let's check out another game. Okay, so this was the second game here. Opening hand was pretty awesome. I was definitely happy to see this. We have 2 lands available to us. We have 2 options for a turn 1 play in Lava Spike and Lightning Bolt. And then turn 2 we have 2 options as well with the Kiln Fiend and a Keldon Marauder, which is great. Odds are we're going to put out that Marauder first. It's usually going to be your best play in order to try and get that 3 damage in on the attack before your opponent has an opportunity to play a creature. Now your turn 1 play here between Lava Spike and Lightning Bolt is obviously going to be Lava Spike because of the fact that it does not have that or target creature part of the spell. This means that you want to save Lightning Bolt later on just in case there's an opportunity where you want to find that one creature to finish off. Opponent is starting out with Goblin Sledder, and this is going to be a pretty nice target for Lightning Bolt. Like we said, Lava Spike would not be able to take down the Sledder, but the Sledder is going to be something that could be very, very troublesome for us, so we're going to want to try and get that out as soon as possible. This also may change up my turn 2 play. Most of the time, like I said, you want to do Keldon Marauder so you can get that damage in as fast as possible, but I instead decided to go with Kiln Fiend. Now, I'm not sure if this is the right play, but here's my reasoning behind it. What I wanted to do is get Kiln Fiend out as soon as possible. When you're playing a Goblin aggro deck, they're able to put out creatures very fast and create that wall. They use double Sledders in order to pump up the creatures and get around whatever blockers you may have. We do have some options as far as creature kill thanks to Lightning Bolt and stuff like that, Chain Lightning, that can target down creatures and get them out of the way. However, we are running also a lot of spells like Flame Jet and Lava Spike, which are only target player and do not bring in that or target creature section. This puts us at a significant disadvantage. So what we're going to look to do is try and kill off some of the creatures in combat. The other reasoning behind this is that we want as many spells as possible to hit our opponent and not be wasted on creatures. Lightning Bolt will be a great spell for removing the Goblin Sledder. However, by using that on the Sledder, it is 3 damage that my opponent is not taking, and it is another 3 damage that I have to find in my deck somewhere as I draw cards. So what we wanted to do here in my thoughts were that if I get this Kiln Fiend out, it creates a significant threat to the point where my opponent is going to want to block it, is going to find itself in a need to block it, and I can use the Lightning Bolt to kind of manipulate things by killing off creatures that may be blocking and killing it. It's a two-way street because it does have that 2 toughness, and the pump ability on Kiln Fiend only pumps up the power, so he's able to simply block it with these 2 cards right here. The War Marshal was definitely something I didn't want to see. I had expected if he had played, any of the other single drops, any of the other creatures, it would have been great. This is going to give him a significant advantage because it combos off decently with the Sledder, and the fact that the War Marshal gives him yet another Goblin to work with. It makes my life more difficult. If he had put out one of those simple 2/2 drops for 1, it would have been a little bit easier for me to manipulate things. I could attack with the Kiln Fiend and have opportunities to Lightning Bolt off the 2/2, which would give him a hard situation there. If I Lightning Bolt a 2/2 creature, he can then sacrifice the Sledder to make it a 3/3, but it is still going to die to Lightning Bolt. So it puts him in a bad situation, and all it would leave him is the Sledder, and I could attack through with the Kiln Fiend. Odds are he would not be blocking with the Sledder because of the fact that it's a very important card in the deck, and the Kiln Fiend would kill it off. So that would have put me at an advantage. The fact that he got this War Marshal out definitely was his advantage and kind of negated my strategy a bit. This was a very temporary strategy because it was really relying on the Lightning Bolt. And if I did not draw more creature control, you see here I drew a mountain, then it would have been holding me back. I did decide, however, I was going to pressure him here, try and see where he was thinking as far as blocking with his creatures. He did decide to block with a single one here, but he is going to be able to sacrifice off the War Marshal again to the Sledder, which does not decrease his creature amount, but is going to give him this Goblin token that is big enough to kill off my Kiln Fiend. Now, I debated for a second whether or not the right play here was to Lightning Bolt the Goblin token or the Sledder. I should, I think, in retrospect, have gotten rid of the Goblin token and left the Sledder as something I could deal with later. I did, however, see it as a bigger threat at the time and Lightning bolted it right away. This is unfortunate because of the fact that it is going to mean that my Kiln Fiend trades for this Goblin token. Had I played the Lightning Bolt and taken down the Goblin token, my Kiln Fiend would have been around for at least one more turn, would have created another awkward scenario at least for him. Made things a little bit more difficult for him. I guess in retrospect, actually, now that I think about it again, I'm going to have to do math live, and this is terrible. But I guess he could have sacrificed this token as... No, because the War Marshal's effect, if I had done it in response, that would be on the stack followed by Lightning Bolt. Okay, yeah, so I still think that Lightning Bolt on the War Marshal, I'm sorry, on the Goblin token would have been the better play there, because it would have killed off those creatures, left me in an okay position. I put down the War Marshal here as opposed to casting off a Flame Jet because I wanted to give myself a little bit opportunity to block. Again, I think maybe the Flame Jet would have been a better play. The War Marshal is going to be able to attack next turn, but it's not going to get through. It's going to simply be chump blocked. Perhaps trying to be a little bit more defensive may have played out in my favor. I think if I had left the War Marshal until this turn, it would have given me an opportunity to block when he attacked through with the conscripts and stuff like that. Prevented at least a little bit of damage. Then again, he could have been sacrificing stuff. The Maw Raider here is the second Sledder, if you're not aware. Goblin Sledder here and Maw Raider, they do the exact same thing. But it's definitely a tough situation because the Goblins deck is a really fast aggro deck. It works with a lot more weenie creatures than Stompy. Stompy's creatures are a much higher power and toughness, but at the same time, it's going to race me out really fast. And we saw in the first one, I'm pretty sure there was a Goblin deck I just played, and that had some opportunities where I'm racing it out, but this is the much slower version of the deck. We slowed it down significantly in favor of some of these draw spells, and it's going to have a much harder time trying to compete out with goblins. So he's putting down more goblin tokens, not goblin tokens, goblin creatures, and we're going to have to take some extra damage off that. Keldon Marauders are going to go away on this turn. I'm going to put him to 9. Lava Spike will put him down to 6. And we just drew into a Flame Rift there, which drops him to 3. So at this point in time, I can survive the next turn, and I really am in top deck mode. All I need now, there are a lot of outs for me here as far as Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, Flame Rift, even a Fiery Temper will work because we do have our 3 mana available. Sorry about that. So we had a lot of outs here for getting this done. We are only going to be taking a 5 damage attack here. The Chain Lightning does hurt a little bit, but not enough to really finish us off. It was kind of, I think we may have had one more turn in us if we did not get hit with this Chain Lightning. Kiln Fiend is going to go down here as a chump blocker. It's the only thing I drew into. I think it was pretty much actually game over there. It didn't really matter because of this Bushwhacker is going to pump things up. Even if I managed to block off the conscripts, he had enough damage to finish me off here without even using the Sledder to sacrifice this conscript and make one of these bigger. So I decided to just not block and take the damage. I think we were really in top deck mode there. We had a lot of outs and it just didn't come to us. I think a bit of a misplay on the Lightning Bolt may have cost us a turn or so there, but it still comes down to the fact that the Goblins is a very fast deck, and even though Red Deck Wins is a very fast deck, we are running a version that was significantly slowed down in favor of card draw to see how it played out, and I think this was a great example of how that speed and that tempo loss can really affect us in the end. Hey there guys, this is going to be our third game. I kind of debated about using this because it is a junk post deck, and it is something that is not a regular contender in competitive games. However, it is something that I did add to the rogues list as, for those of you who are not familiar, junk post was kind of a catch-all term I used for any kind of rogue 8-post deck, and this is going to be Simic Post, which falls under that. Our opening hand is mediocre at best. We have 3 lands available to us, but 2 are Forgotten Caves, and that's going to cause us some issue. I do decide, however, to keep this because as we drop our hand down smaller and smaller, we decrease the odds of drawing into a land in general because of the fact that we are running so few in the deck. In order to try and compensate off this, I decided I would start off by Mountain into Forgotten Cave. This is going to give me a chance to draw a card and hopefully find a mountain fast. Ideally, we do get it. If we don't, we still get to play Forgotten Cave into Lightning Bolt because we did draw it. However, we're going to be able to simply put down the Kiln Fiend. Opponent's going to start accelerating his mana here. We're going to get a great opportunity here if we found a land or a single cost, which we did, to do a lot of damage. This is turn 3, so we're going to be able to attack with this Kiln Fiend and do 6 damage off of these spells, and another 7 on the ground, so it's going to get him down to 7 life on only turn 3. Which is great. That's part of the reason I wanted to showcase this deck, even though it is not, or this match, because it is not a truly heavy competitive one. I think it shows a lot of great elements. First off, that is some of the speed that I wanted to show off with the Kiln Fiend, and another is the fact that he's running these Glimmer Posts, and it kind of shows what tempo you can get against the Glimmer Posts and that life gain. He is running a number of Wall of Roots, and this is going to slow me down significantly as I can't get my Kiln Fiend through, but I am going to have some opportunities here to do damage and pump up this Kiln Fiend. Because he has used it for mana, it is smaller and within range now of my Kiln Fiend's attack after I use the Flame Jet to get him down to 6. He's going to have to block, because if he doesn't, it would put him down to 2, and that would be unfortunate. We hit our 3 mana mark, which is pretty much where you want to be, and it was easy choice to cycle away that Forgotten Cave. So he's going to continue to draw cards here and put down more Walls of Roots. We're in a bad situation because these Brimstone Volleys are a little bit less important. If you were facing something like Is It Post, you would have some opportunities to kill a creature or two. Even then, it is a very small, very light creature base, so this Morbid ability is not going to come up that often. What I wanted to do here was basically be able to not only pump up this Kiln Fiend where he has to block with this Wall of Roots, but it also gives me an opportunity to use that Needle Drop for a change and draw a card. Unfortunately for me, he is running a few Fog effects. Now you do have some opportunities to still trigger this Brimstone Volley Morbid ability on your own because of the fact that Keldon Marauders is going to kill itself, but because of the fact that he is not running red, we will not be using something like Flame Slash or Lightning Bolt to kill off our creatures. We're going to have to try and manipulate things through a little bit of combat damage or whatever we can do to try and get that Morbid. Odds are we're not going to be able to get it. So Reap and Sow gets him his 3rd Glimmer Post, and he's going to be able to build up his life gain pretty well as he continues to draw cards here. I'm getting a little bit mana flooded, going to simply attack through with this Kiln Fiend, and again I'm taking the opportunity to use the Brimstone Volley without the Morbid to get his life down back to where it was and kill off the Wall of Roots. My hopes here is that this opens up the field that I can start attacking through with the Kiln Fiend uninhibited, and I can do this damage fast, even if it takes chipping it away one at a time. You see here it's going to be an unfortunate situation. I have to Needle Drop, pumping up the Kiln Fiend in retrospect after doing the 1 damage through the attack. It's very depressing, even more so that I draw a land. At this point in time, we're 17 cards into the deck, and I've drawn 9 lands. Definitely a little bit of mana flood. So my opponent is going to continue to draw cards here. Reap and Sow there gets a Cloud Post, but I'm assuming that he had another way to get a Glimmer Post. I think Glimmer Post may have been a better way to get his life gain up. I find myself in a situation once again with Needle Drop, and I'm going to have to try and get 1 damage off Kiln Fiend. Unfortunately, Moment's Peace is going to prevent that. I know now on the next turn I'm going to have to face down a Flashback Moment Peace, but it'll only prevent combat damage, so I'm going to attempt to finish him off here. I did draw into Fiery Temper, so this is the damage I need off of Fiery Temper plus Needle Drop. So I'm going to start off with that, and he is in response going to simply counterspell here, if the client will catch up. He is going to Condescend here, hit play and see what happens. No, it's not going to catch up. There it goes. Okay, Condescend comes down. I'm not going to be able to pay this, and it's going to prevent the damage. This means that Needle Drop will not be able to be cast because he takes no damage off of the attack or the play. Another Wall of Roots comes down. I'm going to attack. I'm going to Chain Lightning to the face here. Oh, no, I did this backwards. What I should have done is play that Chain Lightning to the face, get him down, and then use the Needle Drop to try and finish him there. Unfortunately, misplayed that quite a bit, and Chain Lightning is sorcery speed, so I am not able to either kill off the Wall of Roots or finish him off. This takes us out 1 more turn, and we got to play down this Kiln Fiend here. And this is going to, at the very least, give us an opportunity to do that last one damage because he will be unable to prevent or block both of these creatures. There's still a good chance that he has a fog in his hand with these 4 cards, but because we do get Lava Spike to the head, it's going to give us that opportunity I think we could use to finish him off, and he does not have an answer, so we will take down that game. Okay guys, we're going to take a look at game number 4 here. Opening hand is pretty good. We have our 2 lands, both are mountains, which means that we're not going to run into any slowing down based on a Forgotten Cave. Turn 1 play is obviously going to be a Lava Spike, turn 2 opening for Flame Jet, and we also open up ourselves for Wild Guess into Fiery Temper at that 3 mana if we do find a third mountain. So we're going to get things started here. My opponent is playing actually Izzet Post. He is going to start off with a Rakdos Guild Gate here, but don't let that fool you. That's just used for mostly the flashback cost on the Mystical Teachings. So we do Lava Spike there on turn 2. We could have done Flame Jet, but we decided that better play is Lightning Bolt into Needle Drop. Allows us to draw a card and gets 1 extra damage in early. Glimmer Posts are going to come down, slow us out substantially, but we do hit our 3rd land, which means that we can do Wild Guess into Fiery Temper for 3, and drawing into Kiln Fiend and Keldon Marauder. The play here is Kiln Fiend over Keldon Marauder because of the fact that our opponent is running very few creatures, so we're going to look to not only draw out counter spells and burn spells based on the fact that this is a more powerful creature that our opponent has to deal with. You'll see here he's going to Teachings for Electrostatic Bolt. But we also want to get that big fast damage in early, and because he's not going to have a lot of options for blockers, that seems like a decent play. Things get a little more complicated now with Serrated Arrows. If we attempt to play Kiln Fiend here, he's going to, on our turn, put the first -1/-1 counter on it, and then on his turn he can use that second to kill it off. While this will reduce the counters, we're going to use it more likely for fodder to Faithless Looting. Or Wild Guess. We also have the opportunity to use the Faithless Looting as a discard for Wild Guess because it is the lesser of the 2. Counterspell meets our Keldon Marauder, which is a disappointment because we have no other play on that turn, but we will keep things going. Still hasn't hit into more Glimmer Posts, which is always a good sign. Does get a Mnemonic Wall, and he's going to actually target Counterspell with that. I thought was interesting. So now I was going to look for an opportunity to try and draw out that Counterspell. I know he has it in his hand. I'm going to be very aware of these 2 islands, and when he has those tapped out, because he is tapped out here, I am going to be able to do the Chain Lightning and Flame Jet to the face, and just try and get that damage in as fast as possible when I have that tapped out opportunity. So now I know he does have those 2 lands and that available counterspell. I'm going to attempt to draw it out by Flame Jetting, and he decides that it is not something he wants to counter. So I decide that I'm going to, instead of holding that land and using it later to discard, I'm going to attempt to play the Wild Guess, discarding Faithless Looting, and seeing whether or not he counters it. He doesn't, though I think that his best play there would have been to actually counterspell that. I think the fact that he does not is going to cost him significantly. So he does cast out a Mystical Teachings, and I'm guessing this is why he wanted to get that for a Capsize, which he's going to be using on his Glimmer Post. Capsizing my mountains is not going to be a very powerful thing here until a point in time where I get down to 1 or 2. I only need 1 to do those direct damage spells, so it's not going to hurt me too bad. Now he is tapped out here with the islands once again, so I'm going to put down that Marauders first. I know it's not going to be able to attack through the Mnemonic Wall, but it is going to basically be a shock spell. And because he's taking that 1 damage, I went for the Needle Drop. Got me into a mountain, unfortunately, but I am going to still Chain Lightning to bring him down to 1 on the fact that he is tapped out. He can, however, replicate that and send it back my way, but going to 17 is not a huge deal. This game is very much in my favor because as soon as this Keldon Marauder dies, he is dead. He does have options still to capsize this Glimmer Post, but it is only going to put him back up to 4, and I only need to find myself in a Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt or Lava Spike to finish him off with the help of Keldon Marauder. I guess he knows this. He starts tapping something out there, going for something, but decides to not play it out, which I think is a mistake. I did draw cards here, and I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Yeah, that's unfortunate. They should allow you to draw those cards. But anyways, or at least keep the replay going. Anyways, I drew cards here. The next card I would have drawn was a Forgotten Cave, so I drew another card to see what I would have cycled into, and it was a mountain. So he would have been fine for another couple of turns, would have been able to Glimmer Post for another turn at least, get his life back up, and he would have been able to stabilize and take this game, I think. So definitely a reason to show you not to give up early. Okay guys, this is our 5th and final game. Opening hand was mediocre. We do have one land, but I decided that because we were on the draw, I was going to risk it. We do have an early play on Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt, and if we don't find ourselves with that second land, we'll still at least be able to burn him a second time on our second turn. We're going to have an opportunity to draw 2 cards in there to get to turn 2 and hopefully find a play on this Keldar Marauder. So my opponent started off the mountain, and we draw into our land, which is fantastic. Already it's paying off big time. So we're going to start off with the Chain Lightning as opposed to Lightning Bolt because of the fact that it does have this replicate, and we're playing against someone in red. So when he doesn't have that double red to replay it back at us, it's going to be a good opportunity to get Chain Lightning in. So interesting play here. Turn 2, he does not make a drop, passes the turn. So I was not entirely sure what he was playing just yet. We could be looking at Storm, we could be looking at Goblins, we could look at Burn or Izzet Post at the very least. But it seems very odd that something like Izzet Post would stick with one land, so that it crosses that one off. Even seems odd to me that a Storm deck would stick with one land, so we just kept it and gone with it. Draw into a third land here, which is okay, we could use it. It can help us out, we can get one of these early plays in. I decided to start out with Keldar Marauder because I was assuming that it was Goblins on a bad draw. So Keldar Marauder is going to come down. I wanted to, again, get that guy down fast so we can get that 5 damage in before he has a blocker to deal with it. Lagging a little bit here, so that's going to go down and do the damage. Now, turn 3, he plays the tapped land from Mercadian Masks, and this right away tips us off that it is Storm. Now, for Storm to have kept a 1-land hand, he must have the nuts draw, and I am very concerned at this point in time. Perhaps not concerned enough, I decided to attack with Keldar Marauder, because my first instinct against Storm is gotta be fast, gotta get him down as low as possible. And my next play is going to be Kiln Fiend, thinking that, okay, if he storms, it's going to create a blocker that he has to go through, and at the same time, it gives us a fast opportunity. If he does not go off next turn, we're going to be able to do 1 damage off that, and then we'll have Kiln Fiend plus, at the very least, 2 spells for a total of finishing damage. Keldar Marauder will drop him down to 12. Kiln Fiend's 1 damage will drop it down to 11. Then you have 6 off between Flame Jet and Lightning Bolt. That is going to drop us to, 5. And then the Kiln Fiend would have been able to attack for fatal damage. So my play here is that, and hope that he does not have the Nuts hand, which he apparently did, as he taps out and storms off perfectly. Here, Impulse, empty the Warrens, creates all of these Goblins tokens with 2 mana left over for Goblin Bushwhacker, so he had the nuts draw. He didn't actually draw that much as far as cards go, so like I said, you could clearly tell he had the nuts. And I think it's a great game, however. There's no point in even blocking here because he has more than fatal damage. But I think this is a great game because it can show the speed of the 2 decks. You know, this is turn 4 and this game is over. He had finishing damage. If he didn't have this finishing damage, I actually had the win too. So this came down to this turn 4 and saying, do you have it or not? And he did. So let's take a look real quick. I'm going to give my final thoughts more in the text. I don't have it loaded up. So I'm going to give my final thoughts there in the text underneath this video. But it's definitely something where we went to the extreme and it slowed down the deck, and slowing it down did it actually significant harm, I think. So check that out below, and we're going to get to kind of a compromise video too.